Hi all, nice to meet you, nice to see you all. Many thanks for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here talking about electromobility on Latin America. And I'm welcoming also the other panelists. Hi. So as Tim was mentioned, I am Maria Fernanda Ortiz. I'm the founder and general manager of Concreterio, that is a consultancy firm that works mainly about transport planning, and I'm working a lot about electrifying public transport systems in Latin America. I was, as Tim mentioned, part of the public sector in Bogota that lead the electrification of public transport system in Bogota. We have in the city right now about 1,500 electric buses, and we are very happy to get that step on updating our public transport system in Bogota. So I'm gonna have these marvelous panelists in this chat. And now I ask for them to introduce themselves, please.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Alberto Azpurua. I am CFO and founder of Beyond Energy. We are a firm in Mexico City. We deploy solutions in distributed generation and electromobility. We are a proud partners of Blink Charging. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Juan Barahona. I am the Senior Director of Global Operations for Blink Chargers, one of the largest owners and operators of electric vehicle charging stations.
Hello, good morning. My name is Jose Cabre. I'm the Manager for Network Development and e-Performance in Porsche Latin America, responsible for the electrification of all our dealer network in the whole region.
Thank you very much. And why are we here? Because Latin America is working a lot on electrifying the transport sector. Transport sector today is a big responsible for the energy-related emissions. So people that works in transport sector, we are very responsible of the climate change problem in our region. So it's a topic that is right now like in the spot of our governments, and it's been growing a lot in the last 2 years. Not only the public transport systems that are incorporating a lot of electric buses into the systems, having Bogota and Santiago de Chile as the leaders, but also for the electric cars. In about 2 years, the number of EV sales has been double, and this is a breaking point for the region to transform the transport sector to have less impact in our cities and in our citizens. We have a lot of challenge as well, because there is a lot to do in this point from the public sector, from the private sector, from the side of policies and regulations, and also from the private sector to get into the markets, to teach all the stakeholders how to manage these systems, these new systems that have additional challenges, like, for example, the infrastructure. And for that reason, it's very important what companies like Blink are doing, because infrastructure is one point that we have to deal with right now to implement the electric vehicles in our cities. So our first topic to talk here is precisely which are the big challenges that electric vehicles and electrification of transport system has in Latin America. So Alberto, please, how do you think about what are the big challenges that Latin America has today for electrifying the transport sector?
Well, the first challenge is about the change, the form how the people think about the charge and uses and the using of the mobility. Remember, we grow with the chip of gas, and we are changing to the chip of electricity, electrification. One of the things we need is first is a huge deployment of infrastructure in the region. This is really important. Today, Mexico is really easy to do all the deployment of this kind of infrastructure. The other thing is begin to help and show to the people that the private equity funds in infrastructure. In the case of Mexico, we have a huge amount of money to invest in infrastructure, and is show how this deployment will work. One thing really important, only to have this idea. Mexico today have 40 million of cars with gas. The growth rate is only 1% a year. In the case of electric cars, today we are around 20,000, but we grow 100% a year. And when you see this growth, you will need is a huge infrastructure to help in this all the charging of these vehicles. And we are here. We are really happy with the things we'll do in Mexico. We are beginning in major cities to deploy the infrastructure: Mexico City, Guadalajara, Querétaro, Monterrey. But very soon we'll see Blink in all the Republic. It's sure. This wave is unstoppable. The electrification of the mobilities don't have other place to go. Everywhere, go to the electric. It's true. And the region is prepared to do.
Juan, what do you think about that?
So I have been working with the EV industry for about 8 years already. I started here in US, and I have been responsible of the deployment of charging stations across Latin America. And I can tell you that one of the things that I see as the biggest challenge is lack of information, lack of education, because there are still so many open questions, not only from the people who is starting to adopt the EV industry, from the ones that are trying to switch from gas to EVs, but mainly from the people that is in charge of building the rules and regulation on each countries. So right now, we don't really have a clear platform, a clear frame to work on the industry. We don't even have enough information to understand the different type of charging protocols that are utilized in the different countries. We do see Latin America with a lack of guidance on how or what type of technology to use. Latin America is a region that receives vehicles from USA, receives vehicles from Japan, receives vehicles from Europe, receives even vehicles from China. The three biggest regions have different protocols. The moment we are able to have clear legislation that sets the rules on what type of protocols to use, that moment the region will have a clear path to be able to focus all the resources into a specific protocol, and therefore to be able to provide the solutions and the infrastructure that will make the driver more comfortable to adopt an EV instead of using the gas vehicles.
Before getting into Jose's comment, what do you think, who are the responsibles for that task of education, of changing paradigms, of...
I believe it does require a joint venture, a joint effort between the automakers. That's why we have some guys in here next for the automakers, but also for the companies that provide the service of charging. Because at the end of the day, it's an effort that we have to create together to be able to drive that change. I believe that Latin America right now is almost at the same stage that we were here in US 2017, 18. Where we were just starting to adopt the vehicles. Back in those days, you were driving on I-95 and you barely see an EV. You were not even looking for it. Now you drive on the I-95 and you see left and you see an EV. You see right and you see another EV. Because that information is now getting to the point that the drivers are getting more educated. But it's an effort that has to be made in conjunction between all the actors.
Jose.
Well, from the manufacturer's perspective, we have achieved to build a robust network in our countries in Latin America, meaning a charging ecosystem in our customers' house, in our dealerships, and in some destination chargings where our customers usually go. But I agree with Juan. The next step, what we need is a legislation, is to have this official push for electrics, these official incentives, because in the end, we as manufacturers can only assure the customer ecosystem, but at a smaller scale. So in order to keep potentiating the EVs and keep potentiating the whole electromobility, we need now legislation and we need now the governments to step in and provide these incentives to our customers. And basically you see that. All the countries where electromobility has been a success, it's because there is a clear legal frame. It's because there is clear rules, clear incentives to do this. And as a brief example to Juan Carlos was saying about the manufacturers and the officials getting together, we have Colombia, the case in Colombia, which recently they were discussing what type of standard they would choose. And it needed the car manufacturers and the authorities to sit together and get to a common understanding of what is best for the country. So that's what we need. We need this next step on having the authorities stepping in and defining clear rules and clear incentives for this to keep moving forward.
Yes, because the other clear challenge that we have in Latin America right now is the clear gap, financial gap that is still present between e-vehicles, electric vehicles, and the traditional internal combustion cars. So what do you think, what can we do to cover that gap, that financial gap that is still present in our countries between these two kind of vehicles? Alberto.
Well, the gap, we must understand first is about the region. Is the gap, today we have a combustion cars, in the other side we have the electric car. But in the middle, we have the possibility, and we see is the people who take your combustion car and do the change to electric. They remove the motor and change the part, put batteries, and you see companies, for example, in Monterrey, like EVH is a company partner of us in this, and they do this. We see in some cases the migration. In the other side, about the financial, you see some financial institutions like Banco, is a green bank in Mexico. They offer special rates and terms to finance cars. But the truth, always the financial gap will be in the middle, but in the long term, the price of the electric cars will be lower and will be in the same level of the combustion cars. And the other thing really important, not only the gap financial, is the people feel comfortable with the infrastructure to support the charge, and the people will feel more comfortable to buy a car. It's a challenge in both sides.
Yeah, because infrastructure is additionally, because today
I agree.
The internal combustion cars, they don't need that infrastructure. So what do you think what is the best business model or the best scheme to implement this infrastructure, this new infrastructure that the cars need for operate in the region?
So it's funny though, because it all goes back to the topic of education as well. When the driver is thinking on switching from an internal combustion engine to an electric vehicle, the first thing that comes to the mind is, when am I going to charge this vehicle? Because I don't see any charging stations nearby. The truth is that once you do that change and you start becoming an EV driver, you realize that at least 70 to 80% of the charging events actually happens at home. the cost of electricity at home is even cheaper than what you will be finding in any public charging station, even for coming from Blink. That's why we have solutions that are also oriented to the charging events that happens at home. Now, when you're talking about the gap between the vehicle, the EVs and the combustion, you also have to have in consideration not just the price tag. It's also the cost of driving that vehicle towards the years. 5 years term, 10 years term, you realize that you are actually saving money by driving electric, because it's not just the cost of the fuels, it's also the cost of maintenance. You don't have to spend that amount of money on changing brakes. You don't have to spend money on oil changes and all those things. And an ICE engine takes 3,000-4,000 more mobile parts than an electric motor. So the cost of maintenance on an electric motor is a lot cheaper.
Yes, but that depends, because today, if we do a total cost of ownership analysis, we still see that electric cars are more expensive than internal combustion engines. But I think that this has to change in the near future.
Completely agree. And you notice that tendency if you start seeing numbers from 2017 where there was a huge gap on that. That bridge has been reducing year over year. And as Alberto was saying, with the new technologies, batteries, of course, are more cheaper. They are also coming with more range. It gives you more reliability on the vehicles. It's getting better year after year.
What do you think, Jose? What do you expect to get these prices lower for batteries and vehicles?
Well, it's definitely an economy of scale topic, and you can see it not only with cars, you can see it with cell phones. 30 years ago, when cell phones were new, almost anybody could afford a cell phone, whereas now I can assure you that everyone in this room has a cell phone now. So of course it needs production, it needs huge amounts of batteries in cars to lower the cost. And yes, I mean, in the end, you need to keep into consideration, as well as Juan Carlos said, the cost of ownership, the total cost of ownership. And that's where also the public policies may enter, because then if you have, for example, a tax credit for this car, if you have a special rate for charging your vehicle at home, that also impacts the cost of ownership and lowers the cost of ownership. And recent studies, even from Mexico, which would be our largest market, where we can actually have numbers, at least 70% of the customers expect to charge their cars at home. So you don't really need to have as many charging stations on the street as you have now gas stations. So it takes a little bit of familiarizing with the product. We need the people to familiarize with the technology, get to understand the fact that in the end, they can have the car fully charged every morning because they charge it at home. And then the more we produce, the lower the cost, of course, and the cost of ownership. That's a key factor. And it's cost of ownership, and it's hassle-free. You don't need to change oil filters anymore. You don't need to change spark plugs, belts, etc. So it's an easier car to keep because there's no scheduled appointments for service, for example. But then in the end, it's the cost of ownership, and again, public policies, special rates for electricity, tax credits, that can help a lot this adoption of electric vehicles down the road.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that we have to do that analysis of the total cost of ownership to make that comparison between internal combustion vehicles and the electric vehicles. So following with the next topic, what do you think is going to happen in the region in the following 5 to 10 years with this market of electric vehicles, Alberto?
Well, a lot of people use the word education. I use the word faith. This is about the faith. We must believe in the electrification of the mobility. It's not only educate. This is one thing. But very soon we'll see, is my opinion, when the people begin to see a more strong and a bigger infrastructure deployed in the streets, the people feel more comfortable to buy the car. I understand the truth, how say Juan Carlos, 80% of the chargers is in the home. But us, like Latinos, to buy a car, we need feel comfortable to see the charger in the place where I go, in the Starbucks where I buy my coffee, in the building where I go to my office. It's how we work. It's the truth. When we begin to see this infrastructure deployed, will be very soon. Believe me, very, very soon, in maybe 5 years like far, 10%, 50% of the cars in Mexico could be electric. It's the truth. Only deploy and faith. That's it. This is my opinion.
What do you think, Juan?
So I believe that the adoption of the EV industry has to respond to the characteristic of each individual territory. We have a specific way of adoption in US. It was through the private passenger vehicles. This is different in Latin America. Latin America has started to adopt the EV industry through public transportations to begin with. We have seen projects like in Chile, where a good portion of the public buses are now electric. Colombia is actually doing a great effort as well, bringing a lot of buses to electrify the services. But there is also a new wave of adoption through fleet vehicles for what we call the last mileage on distributions. All those companies who have huge fleets to make sure that their products get to the final point of sale, they are now changing the fleets from gas to electrical because they're realizing that cost of driving 1 kilometer, because we were talking about Latin America, if you're driving a gas vehicle to do that, the cost is around, I will say, 15 cents, 17 cents, depending on the region, and nowadays with the gas prices even more. If you do that with an EV distribution vehicle, that last kilometer of distribution is about 5 cents. Just that gives 66% of reduction on the cost of the distribution. That's what it will make sense. And at the end of the day, when people start seeing more and more vehicles that are actually electric, as Alberto said, the fate on the EV industry will be increasing, and therefore the adoption on the private vehicles passengers will increase, and then the standard adoption will happen in the region.
Your thoughts, Jose?
Well, we at Porsche, we're very optimistic with electromobility, and we see Latin America as a greenfield where we can only grow. Basically, the region is moving. The steps that the region has taken, if you compare the region with 5 years ago, has been gigantic. So we can only grow from here, from where we start, and especially with Porsche. We expect to sell 50% of our cars by 2025 with an electrified powertrain. And by 2030, that will be 80% of our cars will have an electric powertrain, be it a hybrid or a fully electric vehicle. So we think that the region is moving in the right direction. Conversations are happening. The governments are starting to move. You have examples already. You have examples like Costa Rica doing a great job from a government perspective, from public policies and incentives. We have even cities within countries like Medellin, for example, that are taking good steps in the right direction to electrify the region. So we can only see growth potential. We think that this is moving in the right direction. There are good expectations. We, with our dealer network, we're prepared for this growth. And again, it takes time. In the end, adopting a new technology takes time, takes communication. We need to see it before we jump in. So the more the customers are getting familiarized, the more the users are getting familiarized with the technology, the easier it will be to adopt it in the future. So we can only see growth from here.
Yes, definitely. I think that the commitment that the region is showing with electromobility is huge. I think the goals that the countries are setting for the next 10 years, even for the next 3 years, because, for example, in Colombia, a law established that from 2025, at least 10% of the public transport fleets should be electric. that is a very huge commitment because the cost still is higher. I think that the cost should be like reduced in the following years with this all participation of private companies, and also with the commitment or the regulation that public entities establish. But definitely the region is showing like a big commitment on electrifying the transport sector. And we have to get advantage of the kind of cities that we have in Latin America, because we have more compact cities, and in that kind of cities are better for implementing these kind of technologies and new technologies to get the transport sector smarter and also greener and cleaner for our citizens. So definitely I think that in the region these e-vehicles are going to be growing a lot in the following years. So I don't know if you have any additional comments, or we can move on the question from the public. Anything, any question for our great panelists? Hi.
Yes, good morning. I'm Noah Brown from South Florida Community Services. I want to thank all the panelists for coming and presenting these ideas on electric vehicles today. One of the things that was brought up was infrastructure. And it is important to go and have charging infrastructure, and also educating the public about the various types of charging infrastructure, because as we know with electric vehicles, there's a lot of different charging types and stations. My question was really in concern of incorporating the charging infrastructure into our current public transportation system. For example, there are several park and ride lots located in Miami-Dade County where residents who live in more outlying areas are able to go and park their vehicle there, take public transportation or train, light rail, et cetera, to the major urban core area, and then go and access their car back once they're done with the workday. What is your thoughts on incorporating charging infrastructure into some of these public transportation access points?
We have been in conversations with multiple cities. We actually have multiple alliances with different cities to actually provide the services in those type of facilities as you were mentioning. Now, it is important to be able to identify what is the right balance on the type of chargers and what is the right environment to install such equipment. But yes, that is one of the places where we are heavily engaged with cities to be able to bring the services to.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks to. Hi.
Hi, good morning. My name is Demetrius Thompson. I'm the chairman of Global Mobile Alert Corporation out of Beverly Hills, California. My question is, what are your plans for launching those charge stations on maps and infotainment systems around the world?
So the Blink platform already has different alliances with Google Maps, Apple Maps, and actually your platform has its own application. You can get it free on both iOS and Android platforms. So that lets you see where all the charging stations are located.
Okay, thank you.
And
we need to get them on my map.
And just
We can talk after it.
Just to add to that, we also have this in Latin America. We provide a website for our customers where our customers can see all the charging stations. And based on a communication with Google, we also show these stations in the different navigation systems as well.
Anything else? Any question, additional question from the public? So I have an additional question for you. So what do you think, in addition to infrastructure and the vehicle and all the hardware that we need for put these e-vehicles to operate, what do you think about the software? What do we need in addition to that hardware? Jose.
Software, you mean what, communication between the chargers and the cars? There is a protocol of communication between the cars and the chargers, and that's why I can only second Juan Carlos' argument to define clear standards, because in the end, the physical standard is linked to a software connection. So that's why it is so important to have uniform standards in the country. So all the charging infrastructure can basically communicate with our cars and charge, because different from gasoline, basically gasoline, all you need is a physical compatibility between the gas pump and the car. But now with the cars, they need to talk. The car needs to talk to the charger and vice versa. So that's why it is so important to define clear standards and uniform standards in each country.
What do you think, Alberto?
Well, I think that because when we take the decision to go with Blink, we did a due diligence of 2 years to take the decision with what provider will do business in the deployment of infrastructure in Mexico. And always we see everything separate. Software by one side, the hardware in other side, everything in different parts. The only company we see, we have hardware, software, payment switch, everything in one solution was Blink. And to us was a natural partner to deploy this infrastructure in Mexico. It's true. And this is a really important thing you are asking, because it's really difficult to integrate hardware and software. You can have a protocol of communication. This is one thing, but works is other thing. It's really different.
One of the things that we believe it identifies Blink is the word flexibility. We have been in the market since 2009. We have had experience with multiple type of charging stations, multiple brands, and what we have done is that we have learned from all those chargers, and we have incorporated such technologies and needs to what we have been designing throughout the years. But most important, we have been doing benchmarking with all the partners and allies that we have throughout the world to understand what the needs are, and to bring that technology to something that is vertically integrated that can be provided to the public. We launch our facilities in India, where we now have a huge amount of technological resources to adapt and to develop the technology that it will be satisfying the needs for different markets. As I was saying before, the adoption of the EV industry has to respond to the different regions and the different needs that are in such regions.
Thank you very much. I think that we are out of time, but many thanks for your participation and your thoughts. I think that Latin America is wanting to have these kind of spaces where private companies can put their thoughts and their advantages of the companies, and also to have this competence of private companies to get better prices and also better offer of technology and also vehicles and infrastructure. So many thanks also to CoMotion to have this space for having these kind of conversations. So many thanks again to the panelists, and see you next time.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.